Hi, everyone. Welcome to Talk Straight Bible. This is Gina Coulter. Wanted to share with you today in some honesty and transparency of something that God is walking me through the mountain, around the mountain again. And I know we've heard that cliche saying of we'll keep going around the mountain right until we learn stuff. But in walking through what I'm about to share, I know that it's in that very place that God gives us chances all throughout our life to take heed to those lessons he wants to teach us as we walk through stuff. And hopefully we get it the first time, but sometimes we have to walk around it many times, like the Israelites, if we can think back of how many times they kept going around the same mountain for a journey that was supposed to be super short, ended up taking them what seemed like an eternity. I can't even imagine. I don't know if you can imagine with some of the things you've gone through to have to just keep walking the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? And hopefully we don't have to. But there are times that I know that God allows us to walk through things in hopes that we get the lesson. And sometimes he might allow us to walk through those things yet again to see how we handle things that next time it may come up. So my son is an athlete in college. Both of my boys run track. One's a collegiate athlete. One is a junior in high school. They both run. It always seems like they are both injured. It just comes with the territory of being an athlete and competing at the level that they do. My oldest one, last year, right before he was getting ready to go into season, he tore his hamstring. And so it put him out of his season for about 10 weeks, which in senior year of high school, when you are being looked at from college coaches and you have those hopes of going collegiate, puts a lot of stress aside from the rest of the stress that he was having with just getting recruited, picking colleges, college application process, all of those things. And then he had this injury, right smack as we got into track season. So it put him out for a while. And I just remember him having this place where he just had this literal meltdown. I had a literal meltdown of just seeing things as we thought they were going to be. And then watching every last thing fall completely apart, looking nothing like what we thought it would. And if you can think back in your life, I don't know what situations or things you're going through, maybe that you've gone through, but maybe you are in or were in that place where you thought things should look a certain way. And then when they didn't, you really are in that place, almost like this grief hits. This place that we walk through of like this deep cry to God of why God, or just asking lots of questions. And it's in that place where, as you know, our faith is tested. And so for him, we had to go through the whole season. Normally season ends in May. Hopefully if you make your journey to states, we start postseason, which is where they compete to those athletes that have made it that far, which are not very many athletes. It dwindles down the field size significantly by the time you hit postseason. And so that starts in mid-March. Thankfully, he was released, I think a few weeks to that, to be able to get back to training, that he would be able to go to postseason. And I just remember in that time of crying out, just hearing the Lord just keep whispering to me, like, I got him, take your hands off. He led me to some verses specifically in Isaiah 44, verses 3 and 4, and then in verse 8, where he talks about how he will bless our children. He will plant them and he will allow them to bloom and to grow. And in verse 8, talking about not to be worried and not to be afraid, because he's already allowed us to be his witnesses, to show us these things, that as he works, we would get to share that. And I held on to that verse with all of my might. It was my encouragement. There's also a song that Elevation Church sings. It became my mantra at that time, and it's called See a Victory. And I would encourage you, if you're in that space where you're wondering how you are where you are and why, that you would listen to the words of that song and root yourself in these scriptures that I'm going to share today. I know that they were a great help to me and to my son, who I shared with going through that time, and just tried to speak into him the truth of God's word to get him through a season that was so gut-wrenching for him as an athlete. Holding on to those verses and those promises, even when I couldn't see a way. Like here I have this kid that was completely injured and sidelined for 10 weeks. He was completely off of his training game. And we weren't sure when and if he was even going to come back for senior year. And we literally watched God through the impossible work and get the victory that only he could. And in coming back just a few short weeks before postseason would happen, he was able to make it to postseason, and not only make it to postseason, but he dropped seconds in his run where he needed to be for that college recruitment that he was hoping for. And it literally came within a month's time, coming off of an injury, 10 weeks out off of training with minimal training, that brought him to a 4th place state finish in the state of Florida. Only God. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. He was able to stand on that and just watch God working and know that it was nothing that he did, because he knew, just coming off of an injury, and he knew 10 weeks being out of training that should not have happened, that it was only God. And maybe you're in a situation of the same way, where you right now are wondering how, with what you see with your eyes of your flesh, to be able to still see things in the spirit. And I encourage you in that place to hold on to those promises God gave you. Jeremiah 29:11 says that God doesn't have plans to harm you, but to give you a future. When you come to him and you seek him with all your hearts, there you will find him. Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us to trust in the Lord with all of our heart. Lean not on our own understanding, but to acknowledge God in all our ways, and he will make the path straight. And then going back to that verse God gave me of Isaiah 43:18-19. Being reminded of the promises of God, that he allows me to see things in the spirit so that when they happen, I can share them. 1 Peter 5:7, we are to cast our cares upon God because he cares about us. We are to go before him to pray about everything with our prayers and petitions, meaning our asks, and we're allowed to do that, and give him thanks, and that we would have the peace that surpasses all understanding. And I can tell you that right now, exactly a year later, he just called us yesterday to let us know that he's back with a hamstring injury again. He's about to have his very first collegiate meet on Saturday. I won't lie to say that I didn't cry a little and that my heart is not breaking, but because of walking this journey out last year, because of the faithfulness of God, because of seeing what he did through the impossible that only he could do, I can now stand on that. And instead of having to go around the mountain with this lesson maybe 10 more times, hopefully now this time I'll get it. And hopefully for you, you'll get it when you stand on those promises and the truth of his word. And, I've had to say to myself walking out this journey, I made a pact with myself that every time my mind wants to start thinking about the what ifs, what if this, what if that, feeling sad, all the things that our minds can create in our flesh when we think with our flesh, I had to create this pact with myself of, no, I'm going to walk in the spirit. And so every time I think about this, from now until whenever he's able to be on that track, that I am going to stand on these promises that God gave me. And I'm just going to simply say the words to myself: I have no control. God has all the control. And I trust him. And I'm going to say that simple thing to myself, because our minds can run away with us when we get in situations. And they can create all these kind of places where it may not even be truth. And God calls us that when we're going around that mountain again, that we get to choose what we're going to stand on. I don't know what this is going to look like for my son. I'm hoping he's going to be back, but I don't know. I will continue to trust, just like the last time, that not only did God do a work in me through the situation, he did a work in my son through the situation. He drew me and he drew my son closer to him through this. So praise God for that. And we got to watch him do what only God can do. And I'm confident that because we watched it last time, that God can do it again and he can do it 10 more times. To stand on the fact that he will make a way when there seems to be no way. He is faithful. He carries all of this, that I don't need to carry any of it. In fact, when I get in the way and I try to play God, I might mess up opportunities for my son to grow closer to God, for myself to grow closer to God. What are those things for you? Where is that place right now that maybe you are going through something again, where you feel like you're like, God, I'm going around the mountain again. What do you want me to learn? What do you want me to take away that I may not have last time that can look different this time? Maybe you're going around the mountain for the first time. What are those things that God's trying to tell you that you can take and put in your pocket, that you can hold on to, that you can not only hold on to for yourself, but that you can share with others around you who may need it? That as you're going through your stuff and your situation, that there seems to be no way that by your faith that others would see Jesus in you. What does that look like for you? Because I know it is not an easy place. If you've been there before, you know it is not an easy place. And it's okay for us to cry and grieve those things which are lost. It's okay for us to cry out to God and ask questions. I think Elsie just shared that in Habakkuk, which is another book right now that's speaking to me as I'm walking this out yet again. But all through the Bible, we saw people wrestle with God, cry to God, cry out to him in their times that they walk through. And it's there that they found him. I hope that that encourages you in whatever way that you may need. I know just to be able to share that with you has lightened my load a little bit. That as we go through things and we share with others, it helps do something inside of us. And so I just hope that that spoke to you however you may need. I'm just thankful to God for being here again. As much as I don't want to see my son walk out another injury, not knowing what it's going to look like, I'm thankful that this time I get to choose how I'm going to fight. If I'm going to focus on Jesus or the wind and the waves. Have an amazing week. And I thank God for this word I was able to share with you. Take care.